Hello, it's the evening of June 25th, 2025, and it's been about a month since I've made a video about my garden, and I was away for 2 weeks and just got back a couple days ago, and you'll see that things look a little wild and unkempt, and a lot of things have changed pretty quickly in that time. You know, we're really into the growing season now, so when I left, we were not too long after a late frost, which zapped leaves off of some of my plants. Not too many, but certain species. One thing that's fruiting nicely right now, even though I didn't put a net over it, is this carmine Goumi bush. And this is one of my favorite fruits. These things are pretty good size, much larger than sweet scarlet or red gem Goumis are. And normally I throw a net over this thing to keep the birds off of it, but I think since they ate like 20 million of my service berries, maybe they've left this alone a little bit, but you can see they are kind of pecking at stuff, so I do need to either net this or get some of these picked off of here. I have been eating some every day. So yeah, this bush is producing pretty well. I have another one of the same thing that I got at the same time, and it's in more shade. I don't give it quite as much care. And that one, I think it had one fruit on it this year, so maybe it's a nature versus nurture thing. So I'm doing this late in the evening. It's after 8 o'clock in the evening right now, because it's really hot and humid today, and it was kind of uncomfortably warm and muggy outside earlier when the sun was really hitting hard. So I wanted to wait till it was mostly low in the sky. So I don't know how extensive of a video this will be. I think my chances for fruit on a lot of things got ruined because of that late frost. So this peach tree, I thought it had a few peaches on it, but I don't see any on there at the moment. This big peach over here does have a few peaches on it, although they've got tons of bug problems. So I wouldn't count on those being too great to eat. This aromatnite quince, and I apologize, I have not done much, spent much time in the garden in the last month, and especially not since I've been back, so I don't know exactly what all the current status of everything is. I'd say Nanking cherries are pretty much a bust at my site now. They used to be really good. Used to have good crop on them most years, and they've for some reason most of the bushes have declined a lot, and they don't produce much, if at all. And if they do have fruit, it's usually got bugs in it and not real appetizing. So speaking of bugs, these little peaches, this is that rootstock peach. I don't know exactly, it's probably grown from a seed, so I don't know if it is a variety exactly, but it's got lots of bug problems, so I wouldn't, my hopes are not too high for these peaches this year. We'll see, you know, we'll see. So I mentioned the service berries. I did have a good crop of service berries before I left for my little trip, but on returning, they're all gone. There's just maybe 5% of the crop is left on the trees. And this tree here is a plum, a wild plum, what is it called? Wild goose plum. And that doesn't have any fruit that I'm seeing on this particular individual, but I do have some other ones, and I apologize for the lens flare. I'm going to try to stop that from happening too much. But I do have another wild goose plum or two that do have some fruit this year. Very few, but a few. And this pawpaw got frosted pretty badly. I don't expect there to be any fruit on that. I did check, and I do have a few pawpaws that are in a more sheltered position that do have a few fruits on them, which is exciting. This Illinois everbearing mulberry that I grafted a couple years ago has grown okay. It did have some fruits on it, but I think the deer have pulled it over and eaten all these leaves off. So my hopes are not too high for that either. But we'll see. Maybe it will produce some more later in the season. This currant here, I don't know what this is called, golden currant or something. Doesn't have much to show for fruit. It's got some little dried up things. That's about it. Black raspberry season is just about to start. Just the very first, I guess what you'd call like the king bud. This one's not even ripe. The first biggest bud, that fruit that forms. those are kind of just starting. So that's an exciting time of year. They're one of my favorite wild fruits and one of the most carefree and easy to grow without too much special attention. And this pawpaw too, I would not expect any fruit. It might have had a couple flowers, but yeah, with those late frosts. We had 2 late frosts, one in middle of May and one in almost in June. It was like a couple days before the end of May. So this tree here, see if we can get out of the sun's way. This is the little Iowa, or no, what do they call these? The Siberian Sea peaches. I did prune this a little bit because it was kind of going nuts. Not too many, sorry for the camera work here. It does have a few peaches on it. We'll see, you know, I don't have to do much thinning on this one. It's only got a few, so that's good. You know, peaches will really overbear and you've really got to thin them if you want to have anything decent and not have the branches snap off. So wildflower wise, there's not a lot going on. There's some lance leaf coreopsis that are starting there. Cup plant is growing nicely, but it's not really close to flowering yet. Echinacea are just kind of starting at my house. Looks like Monarda will still be another week or a few weeks before it's getting into full gear. Yarrow is blooming, and also the weedy chrysanthemums, daisies, these little things. These are all over the place now. And what else? This serviceberry over here is later than the other. It's a different species. I think this is a running serviceberry. Don't know the species exactly. This is from my friend Ray. Now the fruits on this are not that great. And I don't even see any fruits on it. So maybe they've been taken, or maybe it was just not their year. There's some golden raspberries there. And here is a rugosa rose that is caged, so it's actually being allowed to grow a little bit. Keep it away from the deer a little bit. That serviceberry is pretty much stripped. So yeah, I just was kind of gone for the 2 weeks of, that would have been serviceberry season. Now this Goumi, I didn't stop at the other Goumi up there. This has no fruits. I don't know why. It also has these sickly looking leaves every year. So whatever variety this is blows, or it's just not happy at this site somehow, because I've had many years with the same problems. So I'm not excited about whatever that one is. This serviceberry, you need to get a cage around it. You can see the deer are murdering it every chance they get. And you can see like there, the hazelnuts they've eaten the leaves off of. That serviceberry that's caged is okay. This dogwood there is getting its leaves eaten. I forgot to cut down most of my pampas grass this year, or I'm sorry, Chinese silvergrass. My aunt calls it pampas grass. And that was a mistake, so that won't grow as well as it should. The knapweed, spotted knapweed, is starting to flower in some places, and the deer do eat it, which is interesting. I mean, what don't the deer eat? This is a type of nice goldenrod, I want to say. God, I need to get better on my memory here. I think that's can't remember which goldenrod, but that, the deer are eating that. Here's a salsa pea flower puff thing. You can see how big they are. It looks like a big dandelion. And that purportedly has an oyster flavored root. I dug a few of them up this year, but they were not sizable enough to bother with. There's some deer fertility being left in exchange for the browsing. There's a Goumi that I grafted a couple years ago. It grew pretty well. I've noticed that none of the Goumis I grafted 2 years ago fruited yet this year, so maybe it takes to the 3rd year for them to set fruit. Or maybe it varies, but anyway, at this site that seems to be the case. I also was gone for the entire blooming period of the false indigo, Amorpha fruticosa. There's just the very remnants of those blooming here and there. You know, you can see just a little hint of it there, but they're pretty much done. But that is a great smell when those are in bloom. And yeah, over here is this other Goumi that's also a carmine that has no fruit basically, but you know, this is facing west. It's got this hedgerow to the west of it. It's got sunlight to the south, but it's, you know, it's only in about 60-50% sunlight and not 100%. So That could be the reason, or it just needs more care. Here's a sad little clove currant that has never done well. This is a Heliopsis false sunflower. Those are starting to bloom. My graft of persimmon over there is growing okay. Let's see, looks like the apple trees are looking a little rough. Maybe they're kind of dried out. Haven't really checked on the apple crop this year. I don't ever really expect to get much of an apple crop. Although it has had a pretty good crop these last few years for some reason, but I would expect them to take a year off as heavily as they've borne the last few years, and also because of those late frosts, that probably really zapped them, because I'm not seeing much of anything in the way of apples up there, maybe a few. But yeah, you can see the grass is quite long here. Things have been growing. We've had some rain, you know, it's not like a totally drought year. Oh, here's a persimmon. That must be a root sucker from this one right here. Wow, that's just popped up this year. That's interesting. Some plants I've got to get in the ground here in my nursery area. And what else do I have? I don't have a lot going on in these grow beds. This one over here is about the extent of it. I've got some elderberry cuttings. I've got a few plum that were from seed. That's what this is, and that's what these are. I've got some kind of a white currant from my friend Michael, locust thing, and some weeds, purslane, grass. But I do have some Goumi seedlings in here. So this little thing there is a Goumi seedling. This little thing here, there is quite a little grid of these planted, and I just got to kind of weed them and letting purslane, I kind of leave it alone. But I've got to weed after these rains we've had. But anyway, it's some Goumis and some elderberries and not a whole lot else this year. I didn't plant any chestnuts or hazelnuts or any nuts because the chipmunks cleaned me out a couple of years in a row, and I haven't really built like a good cage thing to protect stuff with. So for this year, I just didn't even bother. But that's okay, I don't have a lot of time to mess around with the nursery stuff this year anyway. So this garden is pretty wild. I did clean up around some of these in cage. Also, some of these honeyberries and things that the deer kept eating. This little flame willow has had an explosion of growth. The deer must have been ignoring it for a week or two, because normally it's not been allowed to get this long. So maybe this is the year it will kind of set some new good growth. There's another rugosa rose. Over here we've got the Japanese angelica. Ow, prickly. This, I should know better. This has put on some good growth this year after getting frosted or deer eaten. That's why it got a cage. And you can see some of the golden raspberries here behind the box elder. These are just kind of about to get going. Another week or so on those. And what else? Yeah, there's just some weedy wild stuff in here. There's some currants and some honeyberries. There's the gooseberry. There's the grafted Goumi down there. Honeyberry. Haven't even checked. I guess there are maybe a couple odd fruits on these things. Pretty small, but maybe they're ready. I don't know. If I could reach in there and reach it. You know, these are one of those things that's hard to tell when it's ripe because they probably turn colors. Yeah, it's pretty sour, but it's edible. Like a Goumi, they turn and will sit on the plant for quite a while, and they get better with time if you give them some time. So I may do a quick walk over here. Haven't done this in a while. I redid my blueberry area over here and caged things that were not caged before because they were just always getting murdered by rabbits. And I got sick of that, and there were a few that were just barely alive, and so, whoa, got some wicked skull thing there, raccoon or something. I don't know what that is. Possum. But anyway, the blueberries got a new lease on life here with these cages, and some of them put on some pretty good growth. Like all this is a lot of new flush of growth. There's the only one that's ever had a good crop there. There's a couple little ones here, a few. Boy, it really smells pretty spermy outside right now. I think that's the chestnuts flowering over there. upwind of where I'm at. That's a unique smell, to say the least. Not everybody's favorite, but that's kind of what it reminds people of. Pardon the crudeness of that statement, but that's just telling you how it is. This pawpaw tree I don't think has fruits on it, although it did have lots of flowers. These late frosts, I'm telling you, they got most of the stuff. I think I don't have any real potential crop on my persimmons this year. Maybe just a very few at the top, you know, say like 12 feet or higher height. I think this pawpaw tree might have a few little ones. This was the one that had ambrosia beetles last year. I can't believe it's even still alive. But it does. Yeah, there's a little trio right there. And there's a couple other bigger pawpaw trees back here that have some fruit set on them, which is kind of surprising to me, but I'm pleasantly surprised. So as you walk through the brush, that's a good sized pawpaw there. I think I have a few fruits, and then I think this one here might also. And there's some wild brambles there behind those in the mix. And my catalpa section here. And a few of these have gotten big enough to flower this year, which is cool. Those flowers do smell good, unlike the chestnuts. And I just today had some branches I had cut down in my yard that needed to be put somewhere. They're branches that still had leaves attached, and so that means the leaves will not fall off those branches readily once they dry out, not like in the fall. So I have some elderberries here that I planted that the deer have never left alone, but I kind of strategically put all this brush around them. Here's the elderberry leaf, so that they could have a chance to sort of grow and maybe keep the deer off of them, off their Bozak for a while. So there's two of them here. There's another one, and so we'll see how that works. And yeah, I really need to get the scythe out and do some bushwhacking out here, because the grasses are getting pretty intense, and it's getting to be the time of season where you could use some fertility here and there. So some of my grafts that I've done over the years are doing pretty well. This apple is doing well. I think I cut the top of it off last year because it was too much vertical growth, and I thought it was going to snap off or bend over like this, what do you call it, sassafras is kind of doing. And I have not really been through here to look at this stuff in a while. There's a growth of a pear that I grafted. I got autumn olive, you got all kinds of stuff. It's got pretty thick in here. Gooseberry that's never ever really had fruit for some reason. I think it's a pollination problem, although it's a pretty good sized bush now. I do have other gooseberries growing around in the area, but apparently they're not connecting. This is a graft I did a couple years ago, and then last year I did these two. There's one little graft there and another one here. I don't know how that graft was done. Maybe well, I don't know, it doesn't want to focus anyway. But anyway, that's a second variety onto that, whatever that original graft was, kefir or something, or ears, I don't remember. It's in the notes somewhere. Boy, it's muggy outside. So over here, this is a Goumi graft that was done last year, and I got two grafts, and they both grew pretty well. I put the cage around it because the deer do eat it if I don't do that. And over here, we've got Baptisia white indigo there, which is pretty. I'm surprised the deer don't eat that, really. It looks kind of nice. They usually go for anything that looks good. And as we get into the back 40 here, the black locusts are done flowering, and like I said, the indigos are done for the most part. So flower-wise, that's basically, at the moment, it's a lot of yarrow. Here's some St. John's wort that looks like it's getting ready to go. There's kind of a colony. This is spread out over the years. This is all the amorpha that's finished. And the sumacs I don't think are really starting yet. I did see other sumacs blooming along the roadsides here and there. That might have been a little bit farther south. Black locusts have their typical leaf problems, maybe from drought, maybe from leaf miners. I do have both in good quantity. And I also probably have the twig borers. So here, this chestnut, this is the winkle, first winkle chestnut. That it's got some flowers happening up there. And lilacs are done. Got some chestnuts growing. A lot of chestnuts in this area. This is a chestnut there. There's one here. There's one farther down. Mixed with black locusts in the canopy layer. And I might scare up a deer or a rabbit or two back here. I think I hear some grunting and huffing and puffing. Looks like a deer bedded down here at least once. And then these chestnuts, you can kind of see, you know, this is some frost damage, those little scorched leaves, but they've put on some good growth. I did come through and spray some bug spray thing, pyrethrin or something, or I can't remember, starts with P, on the trunks of my stuff. I think it was just before that second late frost we had, and that seems to have worked because I did not notice ambrosia beetles or new ambrosia beetles on anything after I did that, and that spray only lasts about 2 weeks. And here you can see I could have used some deer spray on this rosin weed. The deer have really been onto that. And what else is back here? Whew. This purple stuff is hairy vetch. That is in flower now. That's nice. And more yarrow, lots of yarrow. If anybody needs yarrow, come see me. And dig up as many as you want. The wild peas, how do you say that? Lathyrus? I don't know the botanical name. The wild pea vine. Those are blooming pretty nicely here and there, rambling over stuff. But yeah, I've not done any mowing yet this year, so that may give you an indication of the rampancy of things on my site. So some sites, if you hadn't mowed by now, it'd be 6 feet tall. But in most cases here, things are knee high or maybe waist high, depending. You know, the big blue stem is waist high, but other things are not so vigorous. So yeah, that kind of gives you a hint of the fertility and the rampancy here. If we have a year that has a lot of moisture, then things will grow a little better, but it's pretty low quality soil to begin with. It's kind of just a sand dune. So yeah, we're kind of looking at chestnuts here. We've got locust, taller things in the overstory. That's a wild cherry there in the overstory, black cherry. And I didn't really clean up my mess this spring. I laid over some locusts and other things that I cut. I should have done that, but I haven't yet. But that maybe will make the deer take a different path. Well, they can kind of step over things pretty easily too, but they're very nimble. Here's a late bloomer for the indigo. And this time of day, we're not going to really see much in the way of pollinators, I don't think. It's pretty late for that. This is, I think this is moth mullein. This has these kind of round seed pod things that happen a little later. And my Goumi, this was a graft I think from last year. Goumi onto autumn olive is doing okay. This Illinois everbearing mulberry is doing pretty good, but you can see it. The graft union has not healed over as well as I would have liked it to yet. Maybe this year, maybe next year. I need to cut this other stuff. Sorry for the focus. This other stuff away. That's like the rootstock growing up. Now there are a few little mulberries wanting to form there, or starting to form. I may let it make a few this year so that I can kind of get a sense of the flavor of that. Last year there was one or two, but they weren't very good. Sometimes it takes several years after you graft something for the true size and quality of the fruit to show itself. You know, they have to kind of build up their reserves a bit. So here we're in heavy chestnut territory. This is my biggest one. This is timber chestnut. And again, the late frost got a lot of things, especially say in the lower 12 feet or so of the canopy. A lot of things got singed. So I think the pattern that I'm going to see this year, possibly with the with a lot of the trees that bear any kind of fruit or nuts, is that maybe some of the higher branches escaped and the lower branches will not have any fruit or nuts. So here are some flowers on chinkapin chestnut. Man, this thing does not want to focus on anything. Hopefully this isn't like a totally blurry whole video. So yeah, chestnuts are going into flowering if they haven't already, hence the aroma in the neighborhood. And I've been checking on some of my persimmons. You know, they got really wiped out by that late frost, a lot of them. And I don't know if any of the persimmons that I've grafted in the last couple of years are flowering yet, which is probably okay. I don't really necessarily want them to be producing fruit at such a young, small size. But maybe next year would be cool if fates will allow it. But that one's growing pretty well. Here's a little weak graft I did as a demonstration. Ah, shit, somebody broke it off. Son of a bitch. It had some leaves on it yesterday, probably a fucking deer got it. I really needed to cage that. But they bent it over. Either a bird sat on it and bent it over, or a deer snapped it off because they ate the leaves off. Well, that goes to show me, don't leave things unprotected. I should know that lesson pretty well by now, but apparently I don't. So this is kind of how the landscape is looking. There's a pecan there that got some cage protection last year. I think over this way the pawpaws are not fruiting yet. These are all pretty low trees still. They're not really up to the height. They did have some flowers on them, but I don't think they're quite to the stature of fruiting that the other ones are, the bigger ones. Here's a little one. This is growing. It's growing pretty slowly, but it's growing. That's probably the best one back here. That's only got about 8 to 10 feet tall. There's a little one here. There's a medium one here. There's a little one that's pretty much dying right here. That one got hit by the frost pretty bad. I think it's got a couple little root sprouts there. This is another medium-sized one here. Got some leaf problems going on. I don't know what the cause of this is. Maybe the, you can hear the buzzing of these power lines. Maybe it doesn't like that electromagnetic bad juju or something, I don't know. But anyway, they're surviving better than I might have thought they would back here. And they're sending out some root sprouts. So this big boy here has got some little suckers going on, which is cool. That's kind of a milestone. Some kind of exotic coloration on the leaves of witch hazel. These are cool. Let's see if we can focus on anything that's in the distance here. I do have a variegated nut back here. Maybe that you can see that whitish thing. It hasn't grown very well, but I kind of planted that one out special from my seedling bed. This apple tree's finally had a chance to grow now that I got the cage on it. I don't remember what variety that is. I probably have a record of it somewhere. This pear tree has gotten pretty tall. This is grafted probably 3-4 years ago. And let's see, is this goddamn thing is still not closed up. I can't believe it didn't close up like the second year. But that's just probably because I keep making a point of it in my videos. It's making me look like a fool. But whatever. It's growing. If it snaps off, I'm gonna have to get the old tall orchard ladder out and whack the top of it off again to keep it from folding over in a good windstorm like we keep having. A lot of heavy rain, heavy wind. Speaking of that, catalpas are notorious for snapping off their really luxuriant growth they make every spring, early summer. Although I'm not seeing much in the way of that on this tree, surprisingly. There's a few chestnuts here and there. Some little ones in cages. There's a few of those that have died. I need to replant. The thicket of wild American plum over here. This catalpa's got a funny shape. Looks like the wind bent it over. Yeah, or it's so top heavy. That's what it's done, because it can't support the weight of its own damn leaves. So if I whack that off, it might right itself a little bit, or it might just grow really weird for a while and then straighten itself out next year. But that's the problem with some of these trees. They don't know when to quit. And the hazelnuts will kind of lean their branches out over time too, as they get heavy with the husks and the nuts. And what else got hit pretty badly by the frost? Some of these Japanese walnuts did. This one looks okay now. There's another one that got it pretty bad. This walnut, whatever it is, I think it's a hybrid between black walnut and something English, maybe. Some oikos. I don't see any fruit happening on that yet. This autumn owl looks dead. They do not live long here. I'd say if you get 10 years out of one, you're doing pretty well. Anyway, I'm not going to search through all this stuff. There's a Goumi in the basket there that was grafted. That's growing pretty well now. It's got some new sunlight, and that walnut next to it too, another oikos walnut. I cut down a cedar tree here, gave it more light. So the grass I'm walking through here is mostly little blue stem. That's what they call a warm season grass, I think. So it doesn't really show up until, early to midsummer. Then it kind of puts on a lot of growth in the latter part of the warm season. It's not one of the first things like orchard grass or timothy or some of these other ones that come on pretty early and make a lot of biomass and then sort of die off or make seeds, early in June or something. That's their strategy. Those are, I think, they call cool season grasses. Anyway, I'm walking a deer trail here, trying to pick up a few extra ticks to bring home with me. The persimmons really got hit pretty well with the old late frosts with an S. And so it's interesting on some of them, at least when I left, the tops of some of these had good leaves on them and the bottoms were like nothing. Here's a pear, Gary Wilburn's pear I grafted. But yeah, there's some strange stuff happening with some of these leaves. This is getting chewed off probably by deer. I guess there's not many things deer won't gnaw on. Some of the persimmons have this real weird flat-topped kind of growth habit. I don't know what initiates that, if it's deer browsing or just you think they'd want to grow up straight for the sky, if it's genetics or what. But this is one here that is tall enough that at the top of it, it did not get frosted. Now, if the flowers survive, they're going to be so high up that I can't see them probably without binoculars. So I don't know, it'll kind of be a wait and see thing. Like this tree, I would have definitely thought it would have flowered a few years ago, and it never has at this size, which surprises me. But because other ones that are similar size or smaller have flowered and maybe fruited for a year or two, maybe flowers for several years and fruit for last year. And this one too, it's got some big leaves. Nice dark, lustrous looking leaves. It's got kind of two trunks going on. I need to fix that. So one of my neighbors has got some heavy machinery going over there. Pardon the noise. I'm gonna wrap this up here pretty quickly. Here's some strange regrowth on a oak that was coppiced over the winter. You can see maybe I put down all kinds of logs and woody material here in the persimmon patch. And the other ground cover is pretty much just dewberries, and there's a little bit of grass. But I'm trying to shift it over to a fungally dominated soil because this is going to be kind of an orchard eventually, and I want, if it's going to be grass, the grass is going to get mowed so that I can harvest easily off the ground, because persimmons are not really ripe until they fall on the ground. When you shake the tree and they come down, that's when they're good. If you pick them off the tree, unless you really know what you're doing, you might be in for a disappointing experience. And this one here too, it's flopped over. Maybe just the weight of those leaves kind of bent that over instead of it being straight like this. I don't know. I wonder if I, say pruned it to there and let this become the new vertical trunk. That might be better over the long term. I'm afraid of branches snapping off over time. So yeah, if there are persimmon flowers, I have seen them in a couple of trees that are more protected over in my other yard. These branches had flowers last year, but I don't expect them to have them this year after those frosts. Okay, so I think that might just about wrap it up here. I don't want to go too much longer. There, Baptisia there. Yeah, that's kind of how things are looking this time of year. No mowing, and this area, no mowing, because most of it's little blue stem. It's not very tall yet. I've got this rabbit's foot clover stuff here. Let's see if we can focus. That little stuff, I guess that presumably must fix nitrogen because it's in the clover family. But you can see, the ground here is like sand with moss. Not very good stuff. Got a little bit of that yellow stuff I mentioned, St. John's wort there. So yeah, this is how the hedgerow is looking. Whew, I feel like I'm dizzy, like I'm gonna pass out with all this humidity. Trying to get the work done earlier in the day or later in the day, so you're not out in the heat of the day. Last few days have been quite hot like this, and I'm sure it has been for a lot of people. There's some landscape collapses. I need to move more of that back here to get it established. I was down further south this last week and it was, 90, 95 degrees, 98 degrees down there. So it was pretty intense. It'd be hard to live without air conditioning in those areas. Here in Michigan, you could pretty much get away without air conditioning, if your house is designed okay and you know how to manage your space. But some other places, it's almost uninhabitable in the modern world, especially as things get hotter and more punishing. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you are in the area, you want to come by and visit, please do. I may be around. If not, you're welcome to maybe tour through on your own, give you some guidance. But yeah, I hope things are going well for everyone out there, and talk to you later. Bye.